I don't know what sellers are doing or why they are doing this, but they are reviewing offers upon receipt.
Wait, what?
If this is a trend, this could be really bad news for sellers who are trying to get the most from this market, but it could be good for buyers who are having a tough time competing. If you are a buyer or a seller or both, you'll want to hear this. Hi, I'm Francine Viola, Realtor in Olympia, Washington, and it is January 2022. Let me set the stage. It is a steep seller's market with only 11 days of supply to meet the high demand here in Thurston County. We currently have about 150 homes listed for sale in the entire county, but we have a lot more buyers who are looking for homes. This is creating an environment where many listings are receiving multiple competing offers that are pushing up sales prices. I think everyone can understand this concept of supply and demand, but there still might be a disconnect for sellers on this because I'm seeing a lot of listings where the seller isn't willing to have the home on the market for more than a day, and they are accepting the first offer they get. First, let's talk about the options sellers have when they list their home. In our MLS, sellers can choose to either review offers upon receipt or review offers on the offer review date and list a future review date. For example, if the home is listed on Thursday, the seller will allow showings through Sunday and then will review offers on Monday. This can give the house good exposure to the market so that buyers have a chance to see the home and sellers can get the most for their home. Second, Thurston County has been in a seller's market for the last 7 years, with the last 3 years being in a very deep seller's market with less than 2 weeks of inventory to meet the high demand. If sellers can have their home on the market for a few days and not just for a few hours, sellers make more money. Not only do I have anecdotal evidence from my own listings, but I also have the sales data to back this up.
I have scoured every single data file.
In looking at the last 60 days of sales activity, sellers who accepted the first offer achieved on average just over 1% over their asking price, while sellers who waited at least 2 to 5 days to accept an offer were able to get nearly 5% over their asking price. This amounts to $6,200 versus $23,000 over the asking price. I can tell you that one of my more recent listings achieved nearly 8% over the asking price, and all the sellers did was to wait. The first offer we received on day 1 was in the lead and was the best offer for several days. But we waited until day 5, and that was when we received our highest and best offer, and it was $15,000 over what we thought was the winning offer. By waiting for 5 days, the seller made an additional $40,000 over their list price, and again, all they had to do was to wait. I can understand that sellers don't want to deal with the hassle of showings. It is a pain while you are still living in the house to prep it for showings and then to leave the house for showings. Nowadays, with more and more people working from home and sometimes the kids are even home for school, it is challenging. But if these sellers were asked the question, would you rather make $6,200 more than your asking price and have your home on the market for a few hours? Or would you rather make $23,000 more and the only thing you have to do is to have your home on the market for a couple of extra days? Which would you choose? Most sellers, if presented with this choice, probably would take the more money option. My concern is sellers are not being offered this choice and aren't getting the sales data. By the way, out of my own curiosity, I did ask a few listing agents who didn't have a review date why they were doing this. And let's just say my question didn't really go over so well.
Some didn't like it.
But I did get an interesting response. None of the agents said their sellers had issues with showings or being on the market for a few days. They instead told me, as listing brokers, they didn't want to deal with all the buyer agent calls and inquiries. And since they already had a few offers in hand, why should they wait? If you are a seller, this is not the answer you want to hear from your listing agent. In fact, this response is a clear violation of the laws in Washington state that govern how brokers are to work with sellers. The very first sentence of the code states, Listing brokers are to be loyal to the seller by taking no action that is adverse or detrimental to the seller's interest in a transaction. I think for a listing broker, not wanting to be bothered by buyer agents and all the phone calls, text messages, and emails is not serving the seller, but instead serving the listing broker. As a buyer's agent, I admit I get frustrated when I see a listing that says the seller will review offers upon receipt, because I may not be able to get a showing appointment quick enough. Or worse, and this is really frustrating, I have scheduled the appointment and then my appointment is canceled because the seller already accepted another offer. But when my buyers and I are able to get in and see the property quickly, this usually ends up as a win for my buyers. If the seller is planning on reviewing the first offer they get, I will advise my buyers to offer just a little bit over the list price to entice the seller enough to accept their offer. This is great for buyers who are not going to overbid on a property by tens of thousands of dollars. In the end, although this is a seller's market, it isn't an easy market for sellers. All sellers and buyers have unique circumstances and make their own decisions accordingly, but it's important to know your options. I try to provide these options to my clients. If you are a buyer or a seller in the Olympia market, call me today. In the meantime, check out my 2022 predictions for buyers and sellers. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.